For today's lesson, we're going to be going over World War II and the Cold War. Our objectives are to identify and provide examples of the different types of government during World War II, identify significant individuals from World War II and also their impact on the war effort, and then we're going to be looking at some Cold War political cartoons. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to analyze Cold War political cartoons and also be able to dissect different political cartoons when you're presented with them. So you need to go down in your EOC review guide to the page where it says World War II, and you'll see the different types of government. Now you're going to be expected to write these in your own words, but these are just very brief overviews of the different types of government systems, specifically that were used during World War II. So democracy, government by the people, or rule of the majority. This would be the example of the United States. Communism, common or universal, a social, political, and economic idea and movement. The overall goals are for structured ownership. This would be indicative of Russia or the Soviet Union, USSR. This is the type of government that will set up the Cold War and the reasons why we disagree with the Soviet Union post-World War II. Fascism, authoritarian, and nationalistic. This will be representative of Italy. Nazism, or also the National Socialism associated with the Nazi Party, will be Germany. One of the greatest ideals of National Socialism or Nazism is their views on anti-Semitism. Totalitarian, think of total. So totalitarian is a government that has complete or total control over all aspects of society. Now, some of these dictatorships can also fall under this category of totalitarianism. They just have other specific governments besides totalitarian that we discuss, like Nazism and fascism. Militarism is when the military has control over social aspects. This will represent Japan during World War II. And then nationalism is more of a general term, the belief that one's nation state or one's own country that they belong to is superior to others. People share history, culture, common language. This is really going to describe all of these different countries. In order to have a dictatorship or even a democracy, you have to have a sense of nationalism, which is why every day we stand up and we say the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, you may want to pause the video so that way you can go in and write down this information. I'll zoom in so that way you can better see it before we move on and discuss the important, influential people from World War II. Now that you've had the opportunity to write in this information, you should move down to the page that you have, and yours isn't filled in, but it looks similar to this. What the purpose of this is, first of all, before we get into describing these different people, is that you should be able to take a list of influential people from World War II and put them into different categories of how they were influential. This one specifically is just categorized by event. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to go through and add the dates of these events as they're given to you. After that, I will go through the different individuals and their specific impact for these events. You'll need to write in that information or take notes as we go. So now that you've hopefully had the opportunity to go through and add the dates, if you've yet to do that, stop the video and go back and make sure you get the dates now. I'll zoom out so that way you can see them all at once. But once you've stopped the video, everyone has their dates written in. I'm going to talk now specifically about these individuals, and it's expected that you take some brief notes and you summarize what I say onto this piece of paper or you can grab a second piece of paper. So I'm going to start with Omar Bradley. Omar Bradley is located over here with D-Day, or the invasion, of Normandy, France, June 6th, 1944. You will definitely need to know that date. So Omar Bradley led American forces first in North Africa and later at D-Day. You also have here Dwight Eisenhower. He led American forces at D-Day. He also later helped liberate Nazi concentration camps, which is why if you scroll down, oh, I apologize. If you go right here, here's the liberation or the freeing of concentration camps. If you don't know the term liberation or what that means, you should write off to the side that it's the idea of freeing. So freeing or letting go the individuals that were still at concentration camps in 1945. Douglas MacArthur, right here under the Bataan Death March. This occurred in the Philippines. You can write that off to the side as well. He was the commander of the U.S. Army in the Pacific. He was ordered to leave the Philippines. He left behind 70,000 military men, but he would later return to free the Philippines from Japan. Chester Nimitz is our next one right here. He was influential with the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway is the turning point of the war, specifically in the Pacific with Japan. He commanded the U.S. Navy in the Pacific and formally accepted surrender of the Japanese in 1945. George Marshall is over here with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but he was chief of staff and he was the one who coordinated the war effort from Washington, D.C. following Pearl Harbor. So really all of World War II, he would be influential. George Patton should be in two different areas on your paper. First here with the liberation of concentration camps, and then also down here with the invasion of Italy. So you can write your notes off to either one of those. George Patton led American forces first in North Africa and later would help liberate Nazi concentration camps. Bernard Montgomery is our next one, who's also down here with the invasion of Italy. He was the British military commander who drove the Germans out of North Africa and also fought in Europe. Rommel is a celebrated German general, actually, was nicknamed the Desert Fox due to his victories early in North Africa and also at D-Day. So if you scroll up to D-Day, you should have Rommel there as well. Yamamoto oversaw the attack on Pearl Harbor, which is why he's located here, and also was an admiral at the Battle of Midway. Vernon Baker fought in Italy and earned a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, and the Distinguished Service Cross. Be sure that you equate Vernon Baker with World War II. On this layout, we have Vernon Baker, I believe. Let me find him here. Sorry, Vernon Baker is down here with the invasion of Italy. Audie Murphy is a Texan who became the most decorated American soldier of World War II. He was also a celebrated movie star post-World War II. And Murphy, you see, is right below Baker here in the invasion of Italy. Adolf Hitler, of course, could go many different areas. Where we have him is as leader of the Nazi Germany, created a dictatorship in what his Third Reich Empire to take over the world and eliminate the entire Jewish population. And so we actually have Hitler up here with D-Day, or the invasion of Normandy, France. Because of this event, we were able to liberate France from Hitler's power. Mussolini is the leader of the fascist party in Italy. He actually teamed up with Hitler in Japan to form the Axis powers during World War II. He was later hung by his own people, and he wanted to restore Italy to its former glory during the Roman Empire. And so considering that information, we have Mussolini down here with the invasion of Italy. Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union during World War II, attended both war conferences to create the plan to win the war and what to do with Europe afterwards. He was, however, responsible for many deaths during his rule. We actually were allies with Joseph Stalin during World War II. And so we have Stalin over here with the Yalta Conference, and then once again over here with the Potsdam Conference. Franklin Roosevelt, or FDR, was president for most of the Great Depression and World War II. He attended the Yalta Conference right here as the Big Three. Here are your Big Three. You can put that off to the side, the nickname for them. And the 22nd Amendment was created after his 4 terms of presidency. So up here we have FDR once again with the ratification of the 22nd Amendment, and also right here with the end of the Great Depression, which is marked by the Lend-Lease Act. Eleanor Roosevelt was FDR's first lady who helped with the Great Depression and also helped out on the home front during World War II. She was even nicknamed as FDR's legs during the process because of his paralysis from polio. Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Great Britain, also attended both war conferences. So we have him here with the Potsdam Conference, and once again with the Big Three here at the Yalta Conference. And then our last one is Harry Truman, president following the death of FDR, attended the Potsdam Conference, and also he was the one who made the decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. So you'll see Truman here with the atomic bomb, and you'll also see him down here with the Potsdam Conference. It may also be beneficial, now that we've finished going over this, to go back through and make sure that you number or physically cut these out and put them on a paper so that way they're in chronological order. The way they are now is not in chronological order, and so that may benefit you to go back and to do that. After you've finished all of the information over World War II, we're going to move on now and look at the Cold War political cartoons that you have in your EOC review. So the first one, and yours won't have these lines yet, but they will, is the one with, it looks like 2 Santa Claus that are above a chimney. With any political cartoon, you want to be able to break it into quadrants, as I've done here. So on your paper, do the same. And look at each square and be able to identify the different words, images, people that you see. So that way you can more accurately describe what's going on or what the artist is trying to illustrate. So looking at the cartoon, go ahead and pause the video, go through circling quadrant by quadrant the different information that you see. Unfortunately, my version looks a little bit different because yours was cut off, but by pausing the video, you should still be able to try and identify what's happening in these lower 2 quadrants. Now that you've gone through and actually circled some of the big concepts that we see here, you should have also circled the flags and the people down here. Let me explain what is actually occurring in the cartoon, and you should try and write in your own words a shortened version, if you can, on your paper about what I'm talking about. So go back to your EOC study guide. To the right of the image, you'll see a square. This is where you should write. So the cartoon shows 2 Santa Claus that are climbing a house with bags of goods and necessary items. One Santa is from the USA, and the other is from the Soviet Union. The 2 Santa Claus are competing to find alliances, which are what is illustrated by the people down here, and gain support from these nations. In the bags behind them are things such as steel, workers, and dams. The 2 superpowers, which is the United States and the Soviet Union, nicknamed the superpowers post-World War II, are finding support with exchange of goods to make the lives of the nation's citizens better. The cartoonist is trying to indicate how the 2 superpowers gained support during the Cold War. Now that you've had the moment to write in the information about the political cartoon, we're going to shift and move to the next one, which should look similar to this with the Iron Curtain. So once again, break your political cartoon into quadrants, pause the video, go through and make sure that you've circled, underlined, and indicated what you notice in each of these 4 squares before you move forward and hear the explanation. This political cartoon was created by Darling for the New York Herald Tribune in 1947. Partially, it was in response to the Soviet activity in Greece and Turkey, as well as the Soviet blockade of all land routes throughout East Germany into West Berlin. The Berlin blockade was in full effect during this time. Winston Churchill coined the term Iron Curtain when he said a great Iron Curtain was descended or has descended across Europe. It was created to demonstrate, the political cartoon was created to demonstrate to the American people just how effective the Iron Curtain was at concealing the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe from the rest of the world, and also just how much effort would be needed in order to break the curtain. It wasn't a task that should be taken lightly by the U.S. government, and it would require an insane amount of effort from both the U.S. and their allies. Moving on to the third one, and this is probably the most difficult political cartoon out of the 3, but once again, create your quadrant so that way you can see all 4 corners. Work on circling these and defining what's being said. On your version, it's a little small, but it says, "Oh, bother the men." The one woman here says, "Could you spare me a little bit of flour?" And this woman says, "Could you hand me your vacuum cleaner?" And then you have the 2 men down here. So take a moment, go through, circle the information, write an explanation off of your picture, and then pause the video and we'll go over the explanation here for you to write in just a moment. The 2 men that are arguing represent Bevin and Molotov during the Cold War. The Molotov Plan was created by the Soviet Union to rebuild Eastern Europe in 1947. It was the equivalent to the Marshall Plan, which was created by the U.S. in order to help the European economies after World War II. Bevin gained American support for his stand against communism. If you look at the women's comments, they could represent the difference between industrialism when she's asking for the vacuum cleaner and also agriculture when she's asking for flour during this time period. You'll notice the Iron Curtain and also the blockade that was used during the Cold War, which we just discussed in the last political cartoon. Be sure that you take time and you're able to actually go through and analyze political cartoons. If you have any further questions about any of the content, be sure to bring it up with your teacher, and then that will end this session of the video.